Hey everybody, welcome to Get to Know Your Wedding Pro. My name is Reed with Best Made Videos. We are a wedding videography company based out of West Seattle, Washington, and I am joined today by Candi Block, who is, I don't know if we've had any return guests on the podcast before.
I'm the first?
Might be the first. She is launching a really new, exciting venture. I've kind of been following it online as well. Right Hearted Weddings. So why don't you introduce yourself, tell us who you are, and then we'll kind of get into all this.
Thank you. Thanks. Well, I'm excited to be back. This is awesome that I'm the first return guest. So my name's Candi. I'm the founder of Right Hearted Weddings, which is a brand new planning platform. It's an app that engaged couples can download, and then they're swiping right or left on images from vendors' portfolios, and we're actually matching them to the right vendors to hire for their wedding day. So it's a little bit like Tinder or Bumble, but for wedding planning.
Yeah, and I think it's cool because, you just always, it's like always, you have always some idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like the last time we talked and, you're planning and you had the outdoor games and you were doing the video tutorial or something online, and it's always a lot of, you have a lot of ideas, right?
Right. Yeah, I do have a lot of ideas. Yeah, I've been in the wedding industry. This is my 6th season in the industry as a wedding planner and coordinator. And then prior to that, my husband and I also had a yard game rental company. And so we've done a lot of very different things. And I think Right Hearted Weddings was kind of a culmination of all of that, of having run 2 very different businesses. I mean, the way that couples book you as a planner and coordinator, very different than how they book like a 1-day rental for yard games. And so seeing that, having helped a lot of couples through that, I really just learned that the way that couples are searching for vendors and trying to narrow down that search needed to change. I mean, it hasn't changed for decades.
Yeah, it's really hard. We've actually been talking, Dorothy and I, a lot recently because, we did the big Seattle wedding show in early January. We just did weddings in Woodinville 2 days ago now when we're recording this. And, we definitely saw a shift of even from wedding shows and the big wedding show to the more boutique wedding show, couples we talked to on Sunday, a lot of good conversations and a lot of good feedback. Whereas the Seattle wedding show where, that old school mentality of the big, huge convention center with everything, and maybe it was the Seahawks or whatever, but it definitely was the attendance was down. Right. Okay. And that was spoken about from everybody. And so it's interesting now, you're saying, where couples are looking at people differently, trying to find vendors. Where do you see, have you also noticed obviously a shift in how people are doing it, but what do you think is it the app-basedness of it? Is it the mobile-based? Is it just because it's a new idea? Why do you think that this is going to be a good idea?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of different things. I mean, for engaged couples, with the rise of Pinterest and Instagram, you have all of these platforms that are already really visual. So I think that's pretty intuitive as a way for couples to get introduced to what the vendors are offering. But the problem with those huge platforms is that they're really pulling inspiration from all over the world. So I think couples end up with these Pinterest boards that have these amazing ideas, but they still don't know who they can actually hire locally to make that happen. So I think just it's a visual platform, and that's pretty intuitive and natural. More and more couples are also meeting online. So the idea of swiping and getting matched to somebody is pretty intuitive as well. But then also on the flip side of that, I think the wedding directories aren't really working for a lot of wedding professionals either, because they are really expensive to be on. And ultimately, those platforms are media agencies. They're not really planning sites. And so I think for a lot of small businesses, when we've been talking to people, they're like, I get more leads from Instagram than I do from, the Knot or Wedding Wire and things like that. And so we know that's where couples are at. We know that's what they're looking for, these visual elements. And then the price point behind directories isn't really working. The amount of time it takes to search a wedding directory doesn't work for couples. I mean, I just think there are so many things that really needed an update and a refresh.
It's so hard. I mean, we've been on Wedding Wire since that was the first directory that we, joined. I remember, I had a long conversation with the sales rep and, because I think it's gone up now, but I think at the time it was $1,100 or something for the year to join. Yeah. And for me as like this was in the first couple of months. I'm like, this is like a ton of money to, for someone that doesn't know if I'm going to be doing two weddings
when
this
you're just
year
getting started, it's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like, and I struggle even today, like, do I stay with these? Do I not? I think that a lot of them, I have really increased the price a lot. I know that someone was saying that they're more based in like Spokane now, but their pricing is dependent because Seattle is so affluent. And so they're paying like as much to be on the directory in Spokane or almost as much. And like the cost of living in Spokane is like way less than here.
Right.
Or, in the, the economy, whatever, however you want to phrase that. But like, they really do kind of like run it. And it's like whatever they say goes and you kind of pay to.
Yeah, and it's hard. And the one thing that I learned too, having relocated from Seattle down to Reno, was that, I think before I started Right Hearted Weddings and I was, going to continue my wedding planning business, everybody said the best way to enter the market is like get on those big directories. It does help with SEO, but they don't even really have a Reno location listing. So if you're listed there and you're paying, you're actually showing up in Sacramento, which is on the other side of the mountains from Reno. And so, I think, again, it's a media agency. They're breaking it down by advertising markets, not necessarily where people are planning. And so that isn't really that helpful for couples that are looking, but also for wedding professionals to be listed there. It's hard to be listed in multiple places as well. So there are definitely challenges.
So I guess before we get too deep into all this, let's set up just a little bit about who you are. Last time you're here, you were still living in Seattle. This was before the big move. You are a wedding planner, lots of years in the business. So why don't you kind of give us a brief rundown of your bio?
Yeah. So I'm also the owner of Block Weddings and Events. So I started that in 2015. So like I said, this is going to be my 6th season in the industry. Most of that has been, in the Seattle area. I also have 2 other amazing planners and coordinators here. So while I am physically located in the Reno area, we actually still service both Reno, Tahoe, and Seattle. So Amy and Bailey take quite a few of the clients up here. And then at the end of 2018 is when I relocated down to the Reno area. And with that whole relocation, kind of came this idea that I'm going to be building something from scratch all over again, whether it's my wedding planning business or Right Hearted Weddings. And so I really wanted to pursue developing this platform and this new app to give couples and vendors just another way to connect with each other.
Yeah. And I do think that that's great. It's so intimidating of moving businesses and locations. And like, I've told, Dorothy, like, we're here now because I'm never gonna like have to it's very intimidating. And I do have respect for people that have moved and do that. Cause like I said, I'm scared against it. Where did the thought, the app are you a real tech savvy person? How did this all, I know you've done podcasting in the past and everything too. So how did that come about?
Yeah, so I would not always consider myself the most like tech savvy person. So I am working with an awesome developer that has been putting it all together. The one thing I love, he's also a small business owner. His wife is a small business owner, and so we've really been able to talk through how we want the platform to service both engaged couples and business owners. And so that's been awesome. So I have been working with somebody to develop the whole thing, but really it came about just thinking about the way I was working with my clients. Even when someone would hire me for coordination, I would often get the question, I'm sure you get this too, where couples have spent hours searching online and maybe they've narrowed it down to, 2 or 3 people, and they're coming to you asking like, who do I hire? Like, who's really the best person? Like, who's going to be the right fit for my wedding day and the team of people that I already have hired? And so this app is a great way to give couples that confidence that they need, because once they're swiping, we're actually going to present them custom results that say, this photographer is a 90% match versus an 80% match or a 70% match. And so it really helps take the guesswork out of that for them.
And how do you guys like figure out those? Is that based off like the visual appearance? Is that like of the work, or how do you guys kind of figure that?
Yeah. So on the platform, our vendors have profiles that they set up. So they're able to write a short bio and input some information. And then the primary focus is on the images that they upload. So they can upload up to 50 pictures from their portfolio. And then those are the pictures that couples are swiping on. And so as couples are swiping, we keep track of that progress. And then that's what goes into those matches. And then from there, they can start filtering based on, they can also favorite some images. So that kind of goes into it as well. And then very soon, we're going to be adding some like budget filters on there as well. So we can really help people narrow it down.
Is this primarily going to be, I would assume, like photographer, coordination, floral? Yeah,
so we have 10 different vendor categories right now. Unfortunately, we don't have videographers yet. Videographers and DJs, mostly because it is a very visual platform. And we wanted to start by making development easy. So it is just images. As we get more feedback and more interest, we're planning to add in some videos so people can do video clips, and then we can add on some of those other categories.
Well, and don't feel too bad. So when I started, I'm trying to do the math. So I started my business 2013. Joined Wedding Wire, and one of the reasons why I did Wedding Wire is because the knot, and I don't know, the knot's been around 20 years, however long the knot's been around.
They've been around since the 90s.
So in 2014, they could not upload video.
Really?
And it
in 2014?
Yeah, it wasn't until I think it was like 15. Whenever they made that switch is when I joined, because I mean, literally, like you could put photos on there like Wedding Wire, but you could not actually embed videos at all. And I remember like screaming at the sales guy. I was like, how are you expecting videographers? So don't feel, it is harder. I do understand that the development of that is more challenging.
Yeah. It's something that I think we'll be able to add pretty soon. But just we are doing beta testing in the fall, just getting people on here, really testing that this is working. It's a good way for people to get matched. It was just a lot easier to do that with just standard photos. And then we're always doing iterations based on the feedback that we're getting and what both our vendors and the couples are asking for, what kind of tools they want. And so we're constantly making updates and iterations to it for sure.
Well, no, it's tough because even like I just posted the video from Weddings in Woodinville today. And like, we're tagging all the people, and, we had like 30 different vendors, but there's like, the restroom rentals and like the drape, and it's like, I don't know how you market as like, because it's tough when you don't, like we're like, photo and like even you guys like, coordination and event stuff, like you can kind of show, I don't know. It's really hard.
And there's a lot of vendors too that I found are, and you know this too, just from interviewing people on this podcast, that I like to call like the double, triple threats of the industry, where they're like, we have a venue and we plan and we can do flowers and we have rentals. And so as we've been talking to them, we're also trying to figure out like which category is best for you to be listed in. Or another example, we have a mobile bar that is also a photo booth. And so, you just start to realize how blurred some of these lines can get, but we still want to help that vendor get connected to the right people. So some of it's a little bit of trial and error of like, let's put you in this category, see if it's working. Let's switch you over, maybe get you in both for a little bit and, see what works best.
So what vendor types do you have so far? You said you have 10.
Yeah. So we have venues, planners and coordinators, photography, florists, rentals, stationery and signage, attire, which could be anything from gowns to suits and tuxes and jewelry. We have hair and makeup, and then catering and desserts.
And so what have you found is you're getting the most signups for right now, or what's been hot categories people are trying to get on?
Yeah. So last year while we were in development, we started signing on some founding members. Those are people that we were just talking to about the idea. They were really excited about it. They've done all of our beta testing. So we were trying to get a really good variety in every single category. I have found that we have a lot of venues, which are always a great starting point for planning. And that's been great because they're really excited to tell their couples about it as well. And then we have quite quite a few different photographers, florists, and rental companies as well. I think those are very just naturally, very visual, probably followed by like planners and coordinators as well.
And so right now you guys are kind of beta testing, I guess, in Reno and in Seattle, right?
Yeah. So we did our official beta testing in the fall pre-launch. That was just working out the major kinks that we had, which is just honestly, a really fun process coming from the creative industry to really a tech startup, just working through what that whole process was, realizing that there are different issues based on which web browser you're using and whether it's Android versus Apple and all sorts of things like that. So we were working out major kinks in the fall, and now we're officially launched and live, but we are still only in the Reno Tahoe area and then the greater Seattle area.
So you guys are live now going.
Yeah. Yep. So the app is available. Anyone can download it on the App Store or Google Play. Our vendors actually sign up through our website because the feedback we got from vendors was that if they're going to set up a profile and upload pictures, they want to do it from their desktop. So the app is the portal for engaged couples to go in, and then the website is the portal for our vendors to sign on. But yeah, both are live, and anyone can access those and sign up now.
Yeah, it's so funny. You're just talking about like the issues and Android and everything, and like I have guys that like help do like real specific stuff like on my website that I need, and like I'll pull it up and I'll be like, oh, that's wrong or whatever, and they'll be like, well, no, like because the emulator that I have on my thing, I'm like, no, like pull out your phone and type it in and you will see, because like they have all this stuff like, well, this is like what it'll look like if you're on an iPad. Pull out your phone, because it's like there's always something and you think you have it. There's
always something weird. Yeah. And so, what I've been most thankful for, we've just had the most like supportive group of vendors that have been giving feedback all along. And sharing ideas of, they're like, hey, have you thought about this? Like, what if it could do this? Like, so just great ideas, but also just saying like, hey, this looks weird. Like this button isn't working, this link, because there are just so many like tiny facets to the whole thing working correctly. It's like, I feel like as the creator of anything, you have to like live in the clouds and see the big picture, but then also get super granular. And so everyone that's been beta testing has been really helpful, just working out every little like kink or issue.
Has this gone deeper, just like you said, in terms of like the nitty gritty and all that, than you ever thought, having not been in the tech world before?
Yeah, definitely. It's just so interesting. Even just how I feel like I've grown as a business owner, just having this completely different experience of functioning more like a tech startup than just a creative solo entrepreneur. But always still balancing both of those, I think, is interesting.
Well, and it's interesting that too, because you are like accountable to the clients and the vendors and everybody. You have a lot of like, I'm sure you have a lot of voices and opinions and things that are swirling.
Yeah, definitely. And I've joined a startup incubator in Nevada. And so there are a lot of mentors in that program. And they are coming at it with this like tech startup mindset always. And so often I feel like I'm really trying to get them to understand, like, this is what it's like when you're just a solo business owner, though, in the creative industry, because they sometimes come at it from a very like dog eat dog, like competitive mindset, which if anybody ever hears anything about like, Bay Area startups and Silicon Valley, like that's oftentimes the mentality. I'm like, no, that's not always how it functions in the wedding industry. And it is a community, and, people have ideal clients, and it's all about finding the right fit, because the way that we work with our clients is just so different. You're working with them on such an important day, but then also for such an extended period of time. And so, I feel like I'm always trying to get them to understand like who really is on this platform, because it's not, somebody with like a tech startup mindset.
No, it's hard. We used to do, and I think they've kind of spiraled now, but we were a big Thumbtack user, when we were starting out. Yeah. And like, I constantly had to talk with them because, you're right. Like, they would have like developers in San Francisco or whatever that have never run a business, have no concept of like paying for something out of pocket, to get, and like trying to talk with them about like how everything works. Like, you really do need to have like people like you know, that have that experience and can say
Right.
like, well, this is actually how like brides and grooms like would look at this stuff. And
Right.
it's
Yeah.
not maybe the way that you're thinking.
Yeah. And I think it's important too, because I remember like I was on Thumbtack when I first got started too. And I'm just like keeping track of your credits and how bookings were coming in. And it was funny as we were talking to vendors creating this, like we heard a lot of that, of like, what do you like and what do you not like? So that way we can make this as functional as possible for you. But there are even things that I know as a business owner, like I don't want to change the way that I send out my contracts or my invoices or anything like that. I want to get connected with somebody, but then, move them in my automations and my workflow the way that I have it set up. And so the way that I've developed Right Hearted Weddings is, hopefully going to allow vendors to get connected to couples without having to change the way that they're already doing things.
Yeah, I remember. I think that was the thing too. Like on Wedding Wire, the Knot for a long time, like you had to like do it like through the portal, and I'm like, can I just like email them or like? And now like it'll even if you message them through, like it'll go. But it is because we're used to workflow and like making sure that. But they have a lot of those like the client management and all that, and like having to like be so tied into that. Like you do want to be able to connect with the people, find leads, and then, do whatever you need to do.
Exactly. Yeah. And so when our vendors get a lead, they actually see the couple's contact information, so they can just email them directly. They see their wedding details, and then they can also see the pictures that they swiped right on. So they know what drew them to their work, what they might be looking for on their wedding day. So it's also just a great starting point, because there's nothing worse than, getting a lead and you're like, is this a serious lead? Is it not a serious lead? And you don't really even know where to start that conversation. And so that's also something that I wanted to help with, is just, it's not really all about leads, because that's one thing we kept hearing from vendors, is that just because you have a large quantity of leads coming in, it can actually be a hindrance if they're not quality leads and they're not responding to you. It's just more of a waste of time. And I hate to put it that way, but when you're a small business owner, every hour counts. And so we wanted to make sure that we're getting people the right leads, and then helping them just start that conversation and get the consultation going. And then, if a couple has seen your work, they know you're a high match for what they're looking for. It just puts you kind of one step closer to closing that booking.
What's kind of been the feedback so far that, are people excited? I mean, let's start with like the vendors, right?
Yeah.
Vendors that you have signed up, like what has been their reaction to this?
Yeah. So the vendors have been really excited. And I think that is a testament to both how eager everyone is to try something new in the industry. Again, the wedding directories have been around for a really long time and haven't changed really all that much. And so I think a lot of them are really excited about that piece. I think social media, while it is a wonderful tool to get connected, can also be really overwhelming for a lot of business owners. So again, I think they're just excited to try something new and be on the platform. And then, for couples too, I think it's just providing an easier, a more intuitive way to go about planning. And the one thing that I've noticed with my couples is that more and more, couples are waiting to get married. They both have full-time jobs. The amount of time that they're dedicating to just sitting and wedding planning is getting smaller and smaller. And so this is a great way that they can, jump on the app, swipe through images when they have a few minutes, close it down, come back to it later. So they can keep searching, and we're just keeping track of their progress. And then when they're ready to see their matches and start narrowing it down, they have all of it right there for them.
So I guess that's a good segue. So walk me through, what does it look like if I'm a bride or groom and I'm signing up to come on this?
Yeah. So the app is totally free for engaged couples. Again, you can find it on the App Store or Google Play. So we're on both. Once it's downloaded, they'll create a profile, which is really super easy. We really just need their name. We need to know what city and state they're getting married in. And then they create their profile. And from there, they'll see all of those 10 categories that of vendors. They can choose a category, and then they'll just immediately start seeing images from the different vendors in that category. So all of the images are anonymous. So they're really just saying yes or no, like I like this or I don't. They can also favorite by swiping up on that. on an image. And then in the background, we're keeping track of all of that progress. And then they can view their matches and they'll see we call it like a little match card basically on the screen that says the vendor's name. You can see their logo, their images, and then that match percentage. So we're telling them how closely this vendor's services or offerings match what they were looking for.
How are you? Are you guys like qualifying vendors to come on, or is there a vetting process, or how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, right now I've talked to everyone one-on-one that has joined the platform, and I think that is the great thing about starting just in these communities that I'm already a part of. So really everyone on the platform, I either know personally or have talked to on the phone or I've had some kind of conversation or they're coming highly recommended from another vendor on the platform. And so yeah, we really are building a community of vendors that can also connect with each other.
And then for the vendor signups, do we want to talk about like fees and things? Like, how does that work?
Totally can. Yeah. So it is a membership for the vendors to be on board. And I say a membership because it is just a flat rate per month. It's either $35 a month or $360 for the year. There's no contract involved though, like there are with a lot of other directories. So it's just a month-to-month basis that vendors can be on there. And then part of that, you'll have your listing in February. I'm pretty excited. We're actually going to add a component where vendors can list their other recommended vendors that they like to work with or that they usually recommend to their couples. So it'll be a great way for vendors to start connecting with each other as well on the platform. Because from beta testing, that was like the number one thing we heard. Vendors were like, how do I connect with other people I work with? So we're going to be adding that really shortly. And then we're also going to be starting a blog. We're kind of reposting the content from our members on our social channels, but the blog will be a great way for people to also be a guest on there, share the work that they're doing, upcoming events that they have, because we really do want to build a community and just help support the vendors that are on the platform more than anything.
Yeah, sometimes those contracts with those directories, it's like you're like signing your life away.
Yeah, it's hard. And I think, I mean, even just a lot of the tools that we use, like different CRMs or scheduling calendars, there's so many things online, and we wanted this to fit in just as easily into somebody's like overall budget and workflows as a lot of those. And there's really just no need for the contract, which I get. I mean, as a small business owner, I hate signing, those large documents too. And so we want this to just be an easy yes for anyone.
Have you, so obviously like with the vendors and stuff, you can reach out and people. Have you guys been able to get clients and how are you guys, finding couples to sign up?
Yeah. So we have an entire like social advertising strategy that we're doing right now. We're also doing a lot of wedding shows in the area, and that's kind of been fun just because we get to see people's like immediate reaction as they're getting on the platform. And then one thing we'll be adding with the vendors being able to recommend each other, we're also adding a way that vendors can invite their couples to the platform because I mean, if you have somebody booked, you also want to get them connected to other vendors that you like to work with. And so I think that will really help as well.
Yeah, I don't think it can be expressed how nice it is like when a vendor team like has worked together.
Oh, yeah.
We had one of our booked couples at the show on Sunday came by and like they're getting married at the venue with the planner, with the photographer that was next to us, with the DJ that was next to us, and then us, and like we're just sitting around because I don't think we had all knew that we all were doing the same.
Oh, nice.
Like I had referred the photographer, but I don't in like the DJ, and I was like, wait, like I was like, this is going to be like a really really nice wedding, just that.
It does make such a difference. And I think that's one thing that, I mean, I don't think most couples recognize that either, the difference it can really make when you just have a stellar vendor team as a whole. Because when people have worked together before, like they already know what that other person expects. They know how they communicate. They just know on the wedding day, like there really won't be any issues. Like this team works cohesively together. And so I think, I think that's why so many vendors want to give recommendations to couples, because it does make a big difference on the wedding day.
Yeah, I like looked at it was Casey and Dan, and I was like, there is like no way that like this wedding is not going to be just absolutely spectacular because you guys have, you found quality vendors, that you appreciate, that came recommended.
There's no like question mark, of just like, oh, like I've never heard of this person or, anything like that. Which that's not to say that working with new vendors isn't a good thing too, because we do recognize that there are a lot of people entering the industry or just getting started. But I think, after you have worked with people a few times, there's a reason that vendors like to recommend each other.
What have been some challenges with just the app, with anything that maybe you never thought that would ever be a thing and then ended up being, or what, have there been just roadblocks you didn't anticipate and how you kind of got through those? I mean, this is like a really big concept thing to try to do.
Yeah, I think some of the hardest things have been, I think beta testing was huge. Like we started, even the way that we rolled out beta testing, everything has gone from, start really small and then kind of grow from there. And that was even true of beta testing. Like we started beta testing with vendors so that way they could get their profiles set up. And then with the images that they had put on the platform, we beta tested with couples. But when we first started with vendors, I think I had talked to probably like 50 different people at this point, and they were excited and super jazzed about getting on board. And my developers like, start with 5 of them, like have 5 people get on the same day, because if we run into a huge issue, like we can stop, like hit pause on beta testing and fix something rather than try to pause like 50 people. And so we did. And I jokingly put in the email that I sent out to these 5 people on the morning, I'm like, if the entire thing isn't working and, just like you can't upload images, like please call me in your calmest voice and like talk me down off a ledge and like, just tell me that it's going to be okay. And like, of course, that morning I get a call from like the photographer and he's like, I just need to let you know that I can't upload any images and it's going to be okay. But like, like you just need to know this. And so, things that we weren't expecting. And it was like a minor fix, like I was just telling my developer, I basically just bring every issue to him. And he's like, oh, it's usually like some minor thing on the back end that just wasn't like matched to like the right type of browser or whatever it was. And so of course we've worked through like every single one of those issues, but I think just being prepared for that, like that it basically wasn't going to just roll out like without any problems whatsoever. And that, every time there's an issue, all you can do is just be responsive and get it to my developer quickly. And he's on top of getting it done. So, we can fix things, but there's always something coming up. For sure. How did you find the developer? Was that a hard search or? It was. It was really hard. Doing any kind of, tech development is, it just varies so much. The people that we were getting connected to, the incubator that I'm part of sent me quite a few different recommendations. And one of my mentors had actually worked with this developer and created an app with him before. And so he came highly recommended. But even just from, the first day that I met with him, I think he just really got it of like, this is going to be such a great tool for business owners. And he was really excited to work on it. Excuse me. He's also amazing at taking all of like the different like coding terminology and just all of the tech side of it and really distilling it down to exactly what I need to know, which just helped me make decisions on how we were developing the whole thing too. No, and I think business owners do always want to find like any new tool or new that we so like I went to the wedding MBA back in October, whenever it was. And so I remember I had gone like 2 years ago and they had this whole thing about like, I had learned a bunch of new apps or if it was client management stuff or, resources or, directories, whatever the stuff. And so then this last time I was like, oh, they have
like they had like Appapalooza, or I can't remember what the hell they called the stupid class, but I had Kelly Blair there with Historic 1625. I said, hey, we should really go check out this class because they're going to have all these new apps.
Yeah.
And it was like this old guy, he was like 70 years old, and he was talking about like Facebook, like Messenger.
Oh no.
Like totally like not.
Like, we got it. Okay.
Yeah. Like he's like, Skype is a really valuable way to like,
oh, no.
and I'm like, no, like, this is the kind of stuff that people want to hear about.
There's so many new options. And I, that has been really cool to see how many vendors are just really excited and getting behind the idea because they are ready to try something new. And I mean, anything that, can better connect somebody to their ideal clients and who they're wanting to work with and, streamline any processes for them is, I think, totally worth it.
Yeah, I think it's a good time for a disruption. I think, every year when, my contracts come up and I pay more and more and they're like, well, this is all, I'm like, the website hasn't changed in like 3 years. Like, I don't really understand why we're paying like 15% more than I did a year ago. But I do think that there, and especially like with a lot of the major directories, like, merging together and things. I mean, I just think there's a lot of frustration right now with vendors paying a lot of money for stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, and the hard thing too, and the one thing I've never liked is that you also just don't know what you're paying. And I mean, we've talked to vendors all across the board. And I mean, even between venues that are listed in the same place, they're not paying the same amount. And so sometimes people it just depends, how great you are at negotiating or not, or how long you've been on there or not. And again, even moving down to Reno, I was like, these prices aren't the same as the Seattle prices because they're just advertising costs. And so we really wanted something that was just a flat rate all across the board. The membership price, everything's listed online. It makes it easy for people. I think any vendor, I wanted to be able to go on the website, gather all the information that they needed to make a decision without having to talk to a salesperson that they're going to get the spiel and sign a contract and go through this huge process. I just think it should be easier. Like we're so far past that. There's so many other tools that are that easy. Like, why can't this be just as easy too?
No, I absolutely hate that. Like, oh yeah, my thing's up. Like, I'm going to call or pretend like I'm unhappy or ask them a bunch of stuff.
Nobody likes doing that.
To try to get like that. Oh, they'll give me a 10% off or I don't know.
Yeah. And so, we wanted the whole thing to be easy for vendors.
Goals moving forward, obviously, you're trying to expand and get more people on, but where do you see this going? And are you, trying to be realistic with your expectations? Because obviously it could be great.
Yeah, definitely. I think, in terms of growth, like our goals are like, the sky's the limit. And, that can be a good thing and a bad thing. I think, we're really just focused on these two markets right now. Like, we want to get as many engaged couples on board as we can. We want to get, we're still honestly just gathering feedback as we go. So if anybody's listening and they're like, I want to go try it out. And if you do, and you're like, this seems weird, or like, have you thought about this idea? Like, I'm always open to feedback. And I think that's kind of the fun part of being such an early stage startup really is that we have the flexibility to do that. Basically just know when you email Right Hearted, like you're emailing me directly, like I will hear it. And so that's really been fun, but we're just trying to get, as many people on board as we can, get as much feedback as we can. And then from there, I think we're going to be kind of strategically growing as well. Just cities that are close by. I know in Seattle, there's a lot of people that work down in Portland and want to be able to be listed in multiple places. And so we're going to be just kind of growing from there.
What's it been like going from kind of the wedding world into like this startup world now? Because I have to imagine that it's like...
It's so different. And there are just a lot of new skills that I've learned. Like I've had to learn how to pitch my business to even get into the startup incubator that I'm part of. You sign up for a pitch day and you go in, you have to create a pitch deck, which is just a fancy term for a slideshow. But you have to have a very strict 10-minute pitch, and then they give you questions for 20 minutes. And then that's just to get an invitation into the program. And then from there, we've pitched at a couple of different angel investor conferences, and, different groups like that. We're doing kind of investor rounds as well. So there is just this whole other component to it that I've really never done or thought to do just with my wedding planning business.
It's like a real life Shark Tank.
I know I try to tell people that. I think the first time I explained it to my parents, that was the only way I could get them to understand. I'm like, so I'm going to go in and pitch this group. And then eventually they're like, oh, like Shark Tank. And I'm like, yes, but not as terrifying or on national television. So if it all goes south, no one else is going to see this, which luckily it has not gone south. And they've been really, really supportive. But it is, again, it's just a kind of a mindset shift. And because I'm still in both businesses, though, I'm always going back and forth, which I do still like being very rooted in the wedding industry, because it always brings me back to why am I doing this? Oh yeah, it's because I wanted a better tool for couples and wedding pros. So that's always a nice reminder.
Perfect. Is there anything else you wanted to share today before we let you go? I think this has been fun. I mean, I could talk a lot about, frustrations with a lot of things and disruption, but is there anything else you wanted to share?
No, I'll just share how people can get connected with us. So our website is righthearted.com. Again, that's the portal for vendors to set up their profiles and log in from there. And then the app is available on the App Store and Google Play. It's called Right Hearted Weddings. Totally free to download and free for engaged couples to get on there. And then you can also find us on Instagram or Facebook at Right Hearted Weddings. And we're also on Pinterest with that same name.
Yeah, and I was telling you before, we recorded, because I saw that art. So you had a big article posted about the launch right at the beginning of the new year, and so I went on the App Store, downloaded it, and so I can verify that it's good to go, and I at least have the app download. I think I had to sign up too to look in, so you might have
Yeah, it is. You'll get the login screen first when you download it. So we have had quite a few vendors that are just super curious, which I totally understand, wanting to get on there and create profiles. We do have a brand new YouTube video that we just posted up as well that walks through the app. So if you're a vendor and you're curious what it looks like, but don't necessarily want to go through the process of setting up an account, you can find that video. We're going to be adding that to our website. It's just called Getting Started with Right Hearted Weddings.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming in. I was excited to hear from you. I know we had talked, I think over the summer when we did the wedding, and you had said,
because we had weddings together. Yeah.
You said, I have this, I think you were saying I got this app.
Yeah, probably, because we were knee deep in development at that point in August last year. Yeah. Yeah.
And well, I'm glad. I was excited to get the email. Like I said, I knew exactly what you were talking about.
Awesome.
So it was good to get you on. And I know you're running around town. You're in town for a brief stint.
Yep. In town for the week. So I appreciate you having me on here and chatting about it.
It's been fun. Well, I wish you luck and just keep me posted, and we'll get the word out.
Cool. Thank you.
This has been another episode of Get to Know Your Wedding Pro. If you're like Candy and you're interested in coming on the podcast as a wedding vendor, you can go to www.bestmadevideos.com/podcast guest. And that's a nice, easy questionnaire to fill out to get us some information, and we can get moving in the steps to get you scheduled. This has been another episode of Get to Know Your Wedding Pro. Check back next week for another wedding vendor interview. Thanks so much.